Hey, thank you all for being here. And
Thank you.
the tales keep rolling. Appreciate your time, the three of you. Huh? And it's actually a very exciting topic we are going to talk about today because it's something very close to my heart, guys.
Okay.
What I want to start off with is a little example from Seth Godin in one of his podcasts. And I look up to Seth Godin as one of the true influencers that's out there. You know, most of them are non-influencing influencers, I think. But this fellow is legit. And in one of his sessions, he talks about what's the difference between work and art, he says.
Okay.
And the difference is that if it's work, people try to hold back. They don't give it their all. Why? Because the general conception around the world is that whatever I do, I will be asked to do more. So people hold. Whereas in art, people don't hold back. You never hear a playwright saying, hey, I think I've thought of a great line, but let me save it for my next write-up. No, right? They want to use everything at that moment. That is the difference. And that is why the topic for today, are you designing the Twimbit way or is it designing you?
Let's go.
Drum roll, please.
Let's go. You know?
Yeah.
And you know, let's dig a little deeper into this for two reasons. One, because if we understand this well, how can we really help Twimbit and everybody who's part of Twimbit make this a better environment for ourselves to exist in? That's number one. And number two, for people who will be joining Twimbit going forward, what is it that they have to tune themselves into, right? Let's keep that in mind as we go through this chit chat. Yeah, cool, everyone?
Awesome. Let's start.
Awesome. And I think three of you are the best people to throw some light on this, because the common thing cutting across the three of you is that you've been around now less than 12 months in Twimbit, right?
Yes.
In your different role. Annette as the chief of editing, and then Alexis and Nadia as research analysts, right? So let's start with you, Annette, first up, because I think you've been around here the longest. Yeah?
All right.
So, and think of that moment when the knife meets the cake. You know, when you first started, how difficult or easy was it for you to assimilate in this environment?
Tell us, Annette.
Okay. All right. I think before I approach that, I should share what I have also similarly read. It's quite different, the take which I've read compared to what you just shared as your quote, Passi. Okay, more than about 10 years ago, I read a book which was about an interview with the Dalai Lama. And the introduction was a very beautiful conversation about how he separates work and life. And to him, he doesn't understand the concept of work and life because for him, it's intertwined. So if you love your work so much, why would you look at it separately from life? So I suppose in my nutshell, when I started working here, I'm someone who's probably taken a hiatus for about a decade before coming back into the working environment. So it was completely new for me. I suppose the challenges which I faced was more in terms of how I would work in a remote environment, especially where everyone's working from home. And how do we manage our expectations as well as the companies at the same time? So as far as I take my work approach, it's got to be realistic. And at the same time, I want to be able to deliver results. So I feel that work is an ongoing process where we learn from. Yeah, that was what I would probably say about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's just like the difference between driving a car and flying a rocket. The difference is that even though driving a car has become an unconscious competence for us, right? If you were to sit down and write down the process intricately about driving, you will see there are many, many steps involved. But when we are actually in that practice, we don't even, pay heed to every small aspect of when I'm putting my hand on the steering, or when I'm pressing the brake, or when I'm changing the gear. It all happens with an unconscious competence. But with flying a rocket, it's difficult. Everything has to be prescribed on point, so that even a small mistake right now does not lead to terrible outcomes later on, right? And that is the difference between a startup environment, which I believe should be like driving a car, versus an environment which is highly prescribed and you got to just follow the lines everywhere. So Alexis, what about you? Do you see that balance between a rocket and a car over here? What was your experience?
To be honest, my experience is quite free flow. I think it's because, for example, like Nadia has a teammate to work with. Like she works very closely with Winnie and Maya. But me, I kind of came in, like I had a teammate, but the teammate went on break and everything. And then it was learning how to kind of do work in a very different way. Because in my previously where I worked, I also had a teammate. But now it's like, okay, now that I want to say alone, but because I work very much in the CX pillar and everyone else are in different pillars, like how do I now get the support I need from people who are not immediately in CX? And it was very much learning to communicate what my needs are and learning to let people know that, okay, maybe I do need help here and maybe I'll go and get it. That kind of decision for me. So for example, like having really great people like Annette, she always checks in and she's like, Alexis, are you alive? And I'm like, yes, I'm alive. And she'll be like, okay, you sound like you have a lot of things to do. Have you talked to Manoj yet? And I'm like, I'll talk to Manoj soon. and then she'll always, that's me being dramatic. Like it's really not bad at all. But the point here is being that Annette is so caring, and it really helps being in, I guess, a startup environment where one person takes on many roles and two people don't usually do the same thing, because we are trying to keep it we're trying to be as optimized as possible. So Annette has been really nice in that aspect, and she has taught me a lot about communicating too. She was like, okay, so here's how you're gonna communicate, and like, I know you're nervous because we all know Manoj is a great person, but he's still my boss. And while I'm trying to kind of reduce the hierarchical kind of thinking, but it's like, it's gonna take time, and I'm trying to ease into it. So Annette's like, so here's a few good ways to bring out the conversation with Manoj if, for example, you are uncomfortable with like the amount of work you're having or something like that. So I guess this is something that a startup environment has really given me, and I'm so appreciative of this. And then they have also given me a person like Nadia. Like I really would not have communicate with Nadia about work if it's not for my recent survey. And I was like thinking, who could be good at this? Nadia could actually be good at this. Let me just hit her up. In a typical corporate environment, people don't necessarily have the time to be so flexible. Yeah, but then Nadia's like, hey, let's go. Let me make time for this, and I'll join your meetings and I'll discuss. And it has been so fun. You have been so helpful. She has been so helpful. So something that I feel like I have learned in the startup. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but yeah, that's my thoughts.
Not really, but okay.
We'll work on it. Yeah.
It's a developing, flowing conversation.
Yes. So then getting to Nadia, then you're a unique case because, like I shared earlier, also we don't engage too much, with part-time operations, right?
Yeah.
With you, we did, because you are that smart and exceptional talent, and now you thinking about transition to a full-time role. What has been the trigger for you to even think about it? Whether it happens or not 3 months later is a different story. but what has prompted you to even think about it?
I think because this is my first time working in a startup culture. So my background is when I first entered the workforce, I entered a multinational corporation, classic big corporation, very hierarchical, big teams, etc., etc. And then I moved into a really, really tiny boutique agency, which is not a startup. It's been around for 20 over years, but the culture was very, very different. So taking my previous experiences into consideration versus what I'm experiencing now with Twimbit as a startup culture, I think I found that I really like the flexibility and the openness, which is a nice opening for the topic later. The openness in being able to work in your own style, in your own time, at your own pace, and like Alexis said, having a sort of like not support group, like a network of people who are similarly as flexible, as open as you want yourself to be. So I think that was sort of the trigger, and like, hey, I like the culture here and I like the people here, so I would really love to join full time. I hope it happens, Passi. You don't say if it happens or not. You're making me scared.
Ultimately, it will depend on your choice, right? So,
well, I'm saying that I think I'm pretty close. But anyway, that's what I valued about coming into a startup like Twimbit. It's that flexibility, and I think part of it has to do with the whole working remotely, and it's sort of like it sort of balances it out. Like that you've got a group of colleagues who are open, flexible, etc., etc. But working remotely also gives you that push and that space to figure out your own style. So if you're working directly with team, you need to assimilate with what the team is doing. You need to be working within that common goal, and you sort of adopt adopt each other's styles. But when you're working remotely, it's this weird mix between working at your own pace and finding your own style, but at the same time figuring out how to combine that with the rest of the team.
And still be like a team player, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think if I were in a different culture, if I were in let's say an MNC, I think that fight, that struggle to find that balance would be really, really difficult, just based on what I experienced before. But if I compare it to what I'm experiencing with Twimbit now, the culture that Twimbit encourages, I think it's a pretty smooth process, which is why I want to join Twimbit full time. Passi?
hey,
Oh!
awesome. So Annette, since you are pretty much a one-woman army as far as the editing is concerned, right? And you tirelessly go through all our content, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And you've made us all better writers and better communicators in the process.
Okay.
But again, how much, when you started, the whole editing process over here was still in its infancy. We didn't have the guidelines in place, right? We didn't even have the brand language in place. How were you able to infuse that in the system? And to do that, were you able to bring your own individuality, your own style to it?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Passi. Okay, when it comes to bringing my individuality, I have an approach which I suppose is a bit different from other editors because I prefer to be wholesome. Now, that's what I would word it as, wholesome, because everyone has got their own, before it's edited, you've got your own way of writing. And to be honest, before I joined, I only knew there was one unicorn. I never knew there was another version of a unicorn, for example. So there's a lot of new words which I learned on the get-go. I had to actually understand the content before I could edit it. So from February until now, I can say I've changed my approach a few times. The first which I used to do was probably go through the entire piece, have a conversation with the analyst, which would maybe take about sometimes 1 hour up to 3 hours, depending on how intense it would be. So, but at the end of the day, at the end of those 3 hours, I realized that I understand what the analyst is trying to say. And by having more conversations along that line, I could improve on how I was approaching the analyst next. So I noticed, and you've also highlighted, Passi, you've given me some very good pointers on how to improve. For example, one issue was the passive to active voice, which was a common issue across all the analysts. I mean, it's not easy, but I was able to understand and explain and create a writing guideline. But it doesn't stop there. At the same time, I still need to connect with the analysts from time to time and understand what their personal issues are in terms of writing, explain how they can grow. And by doing that and giving them suggestions and not just corrections most of the time, people seem to think as editors as the person who just puts red lines and comments on the side. It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, if I feel that your content is improving, I'll probably call or just message you and let you know you're doing good. Just continue that and you'll be going far soon. Yeah. The fact is, the data which you have, which you worked so hard for, should be able to translate into something that a person can read and understand. So that's what I feel is the end goal. And even if you have to put in more visualization at the end of the day, just to get your point across easier, why not? Yeah. So these are the improvements which I have had done, and yeah, I feel it's successful from now on. Yeah. So we're going in the right way, basically. Yes.
Wow, I wish I had teachers like you in school, because
Yeah, man.
my exam copies were nothing but red when I got back.
Oh no.
Like,
I actually use 2 pens when I edit my kids' work at home. One is green and one is red. I read somewhere where when you edit in red, they know that, I mean, when I correct it in red and I mark it wrong, for example, they know that they've not done it right. But if you use the green, they can see, okay, I've done this part at least right, and they feel happier.
Oh,
So once again, maybe it's applying a bit of my own parenting into this. I don't know.
very
But
good.
yeah,
oh,
it's good to have a bit of
way.
positivity. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
positivity is essential
Yes.
for me.
Wholesome.
Yes, wholesome.
Yes,
You're
wholesome.
our wholesome editor.
Correct.
No, truly. Sometimes.
Now we know where that word comes from, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but Annette really is true, so wholesome.
She
Thank you.
is. And like, there are times where you do something right, and then like, for example, people may not necessarily tell you that you're doing it wrong, but they don't necessarily tell you what you're doing right either. They're just like, okay.
Yeah.
So like, when you mark it in green, it's good to know that, okay, I'm doing this right. So maybe next time I'll like work on incorporating this particular, particular style into other things. So like, yeah, that's so nice.
Yep.
I'm gonna go and tell my parents that it's not too late for them to start.
Yeah. I'm still giving you homework.
So Alexis, Nadia, so in an environment like this, which is continually adaptive, like you were saying, continually evolving, where a lot depends on how we connect with each other, how we support each other, right? What kind of strengths, personal strengths, do you think make you successful in such an environment?
Ooh. Nadia, you want to go first?
Personal
gotta
strength.
think about this.
Personal strengths that
I think personally, I feel like I am not too much of a shy person, and especially when it's a startup plus it's a remote environment, so it's like double whammy, and I feel like personally I can tell people when I need help, like, oh, please, can you give me some pointers and stuff. And I feel like maybe that is a strength on how to maybe work better, but a strength in bringing the collaborative environment to fruition is, I feel like personally I ask people what they think first, so I get their opinion before I tell them how I think certain things, maybe what my thoughts were. So by being able to like pause and sit down and listen to what other people say, it makes discussion flow much easier, and that's way much easier to collaborate. So I guess maybe that's my strength, just to maybe pause and ask them like, what do you think? Or do you have Do you have any thoughts here? Before we
Yeah.
proceed. Yeah.
So
awesome.
not being shy to ask for help.
Yeah, basically not being shy to ask for
Yeah,
help,
that's
and to also at the same time give my thoughts when when it's needed. Yeah.
What about you, Nadia?
My strengths. I'm not really good at talking about my strengths, but I would like to think that I am a good communicator. Like, I think I've got a way with words, and I think that is really important when you are, like Alexis says, working in a team plus working remotely. You've got to be able to be on top of what you're doing, but you also need to be able to tell other people what you're doing and where you're at and the problems that you're facing. And while working remotely, when this whole thing started, I found it kind of difficult to adapt to the whole talking virtually thing. Like, I feel it's a lot more effective to talk to somebody face to face. Like, messages get across much quicker, and you can settle issues then and there. But when it comes to working virtually, the skill of communicating becomes even more important, because not only are you faced with the problem of not being able to see somebody, you need to be able to figure out how to not waste someone's time, how to get your message across effectively, accurately, quickly, and make sure that everyone in the team is quote unquote on the same page. So I think that's sort of helped in an environment like this, where you can talk to people effectively.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good message for people who might join Twimbit.
But like, just like a quick add-in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick add-in. I do understand that coming from, like, it could be also a hard thing to learn how to communicate because of how we were brought up, like in a very we were brought up in quite for example, I went to a public school, and then like voicing out your opinions is usually quite frowned upon, and it's like just do what you're told kind of environment. So I do understand that it's a minor learning curve, but I do also want to say that Twimbit makes the learning curve a lot easier. Like from day one coming in, people has constantly been telling me that it's okay, just let us know how to help.
Yeah, I was going to add that as well. Like, I understand that it's sometimes a difficult skill to cultivate, which is why an environment is so important. The right type of environment that is flexible, that's open, that is willing to talk, that makes people willing to talk.
So in this whole process, what is the one thing you guys have discovered about your own self? Because if it is an environment which allows you to bring your own self to what you are doing and not really discriminate between work and life, then obviously, while we are working on our own selves too, right? So what have you discovered about yourself in this environment? One thing.
I'm kind of surprised at how adaptive I've found myself, in the sense that I didn't, like, if you asked me in 2019, like, whether I would be working in a startup, whether I would be working fully remotely, whether I would be doing what I do at Twimbit, I would have said, nah, sounds difficult. I don't think I can do that. But I think over the pandemic and how everything has changed, I'm surprised by how well I've managed to adapt. And again, it all goes back to being in the right sort of environment where you've got good support, it's open, and you've got a space to talk and express and get help, and with good colleagues who are open to talking, who think like you, who are on the same page as you. I think all of this sort of helps people grow and adapt.
Yeah. What about you, Annette?
Well, I agree with Nadia on the environment point for sure. It's not just about how we work, it's about who we work with. So having I have to say that our team is by far excellent. Yeah, it makes working and asking and talking openly so easy. Yeah, so I really appreciate.
self-discovery for you?
Self-discovery. I'm not someone who would probably be able to communicate visually like this before. So that was a discovery in itself. And I think I'm improving as I go. Yeah. And like I said, working remotely also is also something which I am improving on along the way. These two things for myself.
Okay. What about you, Alex? What's been your self-discovery?
Oh, that I could actually work remotely. That is actually possible. It's as simple as that, right? So I didn't think that, how would I say this? I didn't think that without maybe the right people around me to kind of guide me, that I would not be able to get my work done, because this is such a new industry for me. I'm coming in from a totally different kind of field. And I was like very surprised that, hey, I could actually do it. I just need to ask for help at the right time and in the right way. And as long as I'm willing to learn, as long as I'm open-minded about it and I'm willing to try, so I could actually do it. I think one of the biggest self-discovery is that I'm less afraid now. Last time, I'm someone who used to go out with a GPS. If I don't know where I'm going, I won't go. But now, I'm not kidding. Surprisingly, after joining Twimbit, and because I handle some of the client assets and some of the things I've not, for example, I've never heard of the term BPO ITES before. And because of the client, I had to learn. And I had to learn quite quickly because there's a deadline. The client will want the asset then. I realized that it's more like, I feel like I could tell myself, it's okay, this is as much as I can do. Let me just write out whatever I have. Let me show it to someone and someone can give me pointers and I can move forward to that. So I become much freer in a sense, less restricted, less afraid. Be like, oh, I'm not sure, so should I do it or should I not do it? It's like, just do it first. Just do it first. And then you'll figure it out. Yeah.
Great.
So something Twimbit taught me on the remote work discovery. Yeah.
Talking about remote work, a very interesting topic came up 2 days ago. I was having a chat with our telecom team, and then a couple of members in there, Amisha and Ariman. They said, man, Passi, you're talking about remote work, but this is our first job. We started our career like this in the remote environment. So we don't know what the comparison is that you were alluding to. And that was a big eye-opener for me.
Wow.
So, right, because those guys,
yeah, I can imagine
how they have started. They don't know what the hell we're talking about, what differences we are trying to earmark. So we're going to actually do a Twimbit Tales podcast on that topic. That remote work is very old, but for people who started their career 2020 onwards, for them it's a remote concept.
The only way, yeah.
That's true. What is it? What is like to be in an office? I don't get it.
Yeah, for me also it was, oh man, we got to talk about this, explore this a little more.
Oh, yeah.
Really think once you throw them back into an office, are they going to be able to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
No, that's it. It's almost like an episode of Fear Factor for them now.
Yeah, you're like, people.
I do think about it. Like sometimes because of how flexible Twimbit is, sometimes when I have a pretty late night, I wake up a little later the next morning and I start work a little later. And I think of myself, if I go back to the office, I won't be able to do this anymore. How would that be like?
Yeah. So now let's flip the coin a little bit. You guys said, what are the strengths which are helping you? Being open and forthright and asking for support wherever needed, communicating with others. Now on the team, there are a couple of people who are not like that,
Yeah.
And somewhere my fear is that because they are not engaging in that manner, are they missing out on their own learning, on their own growth?
Right.
What can we do really in this environment for those guys? What is your...
I have a suggestion.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Nadia, you want to go first? Go first.
What? Oh, sorry, you froze. What were you going to say? You go first. Okay.
Oh no. I think giving that support, and continuing from what I said about how some people may find it shy to ask for help and it's a cultural thing, I do feel like contacting, just random drop-in, saying hi, contacting one-on-one, just talking and building a rapport. Because it's remote work, right? We don't even see each other that often. We only see each other when we want to talk about work. So I feel like it helps if we build a rapport more on a relationship, like friendly basis first. And then it'll be much easier for people to reach out and ask for help because they know that you are a bit more your demeanor is a bit more welcoming. You don't feel as scary, for example. So maybe that's one thing we could do, just to have more like one-on-one chats, just to build that rapport. Yeah.
I think you're right. Because I heard from some of the new folks that when they look at me, they're intimidated in the first go. Huh?
I think it's gonna be the first day.
And then I got to break that ice. I say, "Come on, man! I'm not as scary as I look. Come on, so
it's the beard, it's the drums at the back, and then it's
you look like a cool dude. Okay,
it's just style, So, what do you guys think? And then what can we do for these people? Because as a co-founder and as a leadership consultant, that was my career before for almost 2 decades. But I was working with people in organizations, and my dream always was, my own company, and this is my second startup now. First one was a disaster. So
we live and we learn.
Yeah, of course. That's the simplest excuse we all give when we fail. Hey, it was a learning.
No.
It wasn't a failure, it was a learning experience.
So the dream really was when we put a team together, it has to be an open, where people don't feel bottled. For me, that is the biggest victory of a system. At the end of it, people don't feel bottled. The business and the customers are automatically taken care of. If we try only to focus on the business and not focus on the people element, then it may or may not happen, right? But if we start with people, it always translates into business.
They do say, employee drives business success. Yeah,
it's a good product. So that part I'm not worried about. But in my quest to have a playground where everyone feels that way, open and welcome, how can we help some of our team members in it who are not in that right now?
I think it's a tough question, but I feel communication comes into play. But how do you probe further for those who don't want to communicate fully? Maybe they are introverts and stuff. So do we have more chat group sessions where we have breakouts where we just put random people together and get them to talk? I'm not sure because, I agree it's a challenge, but communicating is key, I feel, at the end of the day. So we need to figure out how to decipher the communication a bit more.
Back on the chat group session, I do think it's a great idea if we create breakout rooms, randomly pair people together, give them conversation starters about building connections. And if you start with connection straight away and be like, for example, what gives you satisfaction in life? A question like that. It's supposed to build connection. Just ask, and then when they share, there's a rapport will just automatically build. And hopefully it stays because relationships all take work. Yeah.
I mean, some people find it tough when we ask them to speak up in an entire Twimbit huddle. But if you were to put maybe 4 or 5 people in a room, and let's say, so even if there's one quiet person, but he's, obliged to maybe say a few lines, it's a starting point because he doesn't have to feel that much of pressure compared to speaking to the entire team. So I think that would probably work. But once again, like I said, it's trial. I mean, I've not said it yet, but it's probably trial and error. We need to try and see what works and then go from there on. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for these suggestions. I'm going to make that happen. Okay. So I want to throw in the last question here for you guys.
Right.
What would your message be for anyone who's thinking about joining Twimbit, but wants to make sure that their own style and who they are about stays intact? That is most important. I don't want anybody on the team devoid of their own styles, right? And people who want to do them with themselves, what do you have to say to them?
I think it's important to acknowledge you're right, working styles. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that some people are looking for guidance. Like, not everyone has figured out their style. And not everyone has a set identity. I'm assuming like somebody who comes in as a fresh grad who's never worked before in an environment, you're still figuring things out. Twimbit is a space that allows you to play, to figure things out in a safe and an open and flexible environment. So if you're still figuring yourself out, come figure yourself out here. If you have figured yourself out and you don't want to change that, that's great, because we're
flexible.
Yeah, we're flexible. And I think you can always see a culture from how the top management is formed, how it's set up. So say, for example, like you, Passi, you, Manoj, and Aman. From how I've seen from what I've seen of the three of you, you guys have incredibly different personalities, but you've sort of managed to figure out each other's strengths and leverage on that. And I think that kind of spills down into the team, where we figure out each other's strengths. We don't try to change anyone. We don't try and push anyone to be whatever they're not trying, whatever they aren't. But like I said, it just gives you a space to be who you are or to figure out who you are. That's it.
Almost brought tears to my eyes.
Wow, that was beautiful, Nadia.
Hey, told you I got away with words, man.
Yeah.
Communicate.
Okay, what about the two of you? Your message?
I think something Nadia said just now, like Twimbit is a place to play, and I thought that resonated so much with me. So like, yes, Twimbit is a place to play. It's a place, when I mean a place to play, it's like, this is a place where I don't think you'll find a lot of jobs where you come in and you don't get to communicate as freely as we do here. And when you are able to tell people what you want to do, your visions, your dreams, if you have none, you can come in and figure it out and do all of that. And I don't feel like we find a lot of places like that who gives you that kind of freedom to kind of let people know what your thoughts and your ideas are. And going to like draw the circle back to the start of our conversation about work and art and play. Yeah. So when you are in an environment that is so, I would say, so open like this, you're less likely to be afraid of consequences. When you're less likely to be afraid of consequences, you're more likely to try new things, to be brave about certain things, to like ask for help also. And I think it all ties down to really enjoying your working life, and hopefully that could blossom into something you like see your career in maybe like 10-50 years, for example. So like, I would think that it's a good space to start as someone who quite fresh, I would think. Yeah. So that's awesome.
Nice, Alexis.
I'm gonna cry.
Oh no.
Nadia, it's really you and helping me with all my quali and quanti stuff. Oh, damn, girl.
Both of you are stars, I tell you. Alexis and Nadia.
Oh, thank you, Annette. You are the star. You like read through all our stuff. When we barely understand it ourselves, you're just there like, oh my gosh.
I have to say, Alexis is like my energizer bunny. Whenever I'm not sure if I've got enough energy, if the coffee is not hitting me right, I'd be like, Alexis, you free? I want to talk to you for 5 minutes. Yeah. And
I'm
she's
like,
just the power up I need. Yeah. Yeah. So, but if I had no problem, Alexis. But if I had to summarize Twimbit for someone who's looking to join, for example, I would say Twimbit is a company which allows you to bring your A game. So you're bringing your game into the workplace. So what I mean by that is you can bring your individuality in your workplace and you can explore how your working style fits into our company. And as both of you have said, communication is key. Without that, I feel it would not work. So yeah, communicate. That's the most important thing. That's about it for me.
Okay, awesome then.
Yeah. All right.
I think we're at that point. Huh? But great session, all of you. Great insights, actually. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Passi.
Thank you, Passi, for moderating.
Yeah.
Keep building these thoughts further,
Yes.
So thank you for triggering all of that. And have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks for having
Passi.
us.
Yep.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.